Hey everyone. Today I thought we would look at making some punch sounds. And if anyone, knows about punches, you'll know that in real life they're quite light. Even hitting people in the head is quite a light affair in terms of sound. So for cinematic material, we have to kind of punk them up, if you will, if you want that kind of Hollywood sound. So the trick to sound like big in the mix is through layering and some effects. So we'll look at the layering first and then we'll talk about the sound effects. Kept these fairly basic, and I've kind of done a quick sample grab. If I was going to do these myself, I would probably spend a lot more time on them and be very specific in terms of sample selection. But I've kind of grabbed stuff that I've recorded and kind of mashed these together for brevity. So our first layer is a glove slap sound, and that was just me recording a set of, I think, chainsaw gloves. So they're quite heavy, and I was just slapping them into my hand. So this is the first layer, and it goes something like this, and there's no effects or any processing. So they're quite light at the moment, but they do have a nice kind of slap transient on them, as you would expect. I got another set of gloves with no processing, pretty similar. So now if we layer the two, nice transient, gives us a bit of a high-end fizz, simulates a nice kind of slap to the face, or punch to the face I should say. You could also hit leather, a leather jacket. These two layers account for the higher end of the frequency spectrum. And then I moved on to the mid to low section. Me hitting an old couch with a baseball bat, and without any effects, it sounds like this. So it gives a kind of a nice material hit, bit of boom in the low end and the low mids. From there, and this was me hitting a cushion with a bottle, a heavy bottle. Why not? Try something different. So adding extra stuff to the lower end. Let's sum those two so you can hear. And if we now play all our layers, our mid and high layers, we're getting a bit of body to the sound now. Then I moved on to a contact mic hit. Let's hear it. And once we add that in, you get that decent low end starting to creep in. And finally, I thought we'd put in a bit of a style layer, and this was a 707 clap, and I thought it had a pretty gnarly transient, so I thought that would add quite a bit of weight to the top end. So I'm just going to raise the level here so you can hear what the sound is like. And with everything, so it just adds that extra bit of flavour, kind of homogenizes them a bit. Then we put on some effects. I'm going to start switching these on now. For the higher end stuff, we have an EQ, a true iron, which is kind of compresses the audio and adds a little bit of distortion. Kazrog, this lad here, pretty cheap, good plugin. Now I have this turned up pretty full on. Done the same for the other one. I've also put on a bit of a kind of a tube kind of retro compressor again from Kazrog, just to bring out some of the body. And this BX control is just making sure everything is mono. The Pro Q is just kind of taking out some of the lower end. Didn't boost anything because I didn't want it to be too acerbic on the top. So here's our effects. So you can hear that those plugins have given it a lot of body, and now with no lower frequencies, you're not going to get anything that interfere with the low end. I felt that the bat on the couch, I didn't think it was all that spectacular. So again, I used this on a tube compressor, and I EQ'd up the kind of around to the 200-ish, gave it a boost around here so we'd hear a bit of the bass, took off some of the very tops, took a little bit out of the lower mids to alleviate some of the mud. If we just play this without, you can see it makes a considerable difference. And with the cushion on the bottle, I felt the same thing, the same EQ process. I added true iron again, but I think I changed the algorithm just for something different. And we have this now. Finally go to the sub, the contact mic. Let's refresh our memories without any effects. It's beefy, but it's nowhere near what we want. On the EQ front, I took out a lot of the tops and I just gave it a kind of a lower boost. So we would be hitting in that kind of, low sub area. Added some true iron again, give back some harmonics for the bass. And then I added an enforcer. Used a kick preset to give it extra sub boom. So with, of course, it sounds a lot duller because I've taken out the tops, but this layer is really only just for boom purposes. We're not really trying to use it for anything else. Finally, we have our clap layer, and didn't do too much to this. For the clap, I took out around 283 below. Didn't do any boosting on the top. Added some true iron for distortion, compression. Let's have a listen. So no effects. With effects. I also added some parallel processing, and what I did was I simply added some distortion, cold fire, picked a kind of guitar parallel fuzz. I thought it worked well. So that will give just that little bit of extra grit. And then we have a transient shaper. This is a bit of an odd one because what I'm trying to do with this is just take the very tops of the entire signal and then reducing the sustain. So on the parallel bus here, you'll just get a kind of a click, but it's exaggerated. But then I've mixed it in. You can see how low it is once you've added it. And finally, on the output, we have just a Pro Q4, a little bit of bass boost, taking out some of the muddiness, adding a little bit on the high end around 3000-ish, and taking out the very tops because we just don't want it to be too sizzly, because punches, they just don't sound that high end aggressive. After all that's done, we can just compare the two. So these are files I prepared earlier. This is one with no effects and this is one with all the processing. I've tried to gain match them. Right, so that's how I go about making cinematic punch sounds. I want something that's punchy and that the viewer would not only hear but also feel as each impact is hit. So that's it for now. In the next video, I'll post just a quick clip with these punches being used, just to give you a little bit of context. You can see how they work. Okay, well, thanks for joining me. If you have any comments or questions, drop me a line. If you thought this video had any value, please share it. Okay, so yeah, thanks for joining me. Take care.